Hey everybody, this is Zombarina. Woo! And okay, I know it was goofy, but anyway, I just realized that lately I have been contributing comments back and forth on people's stuff. And it's really long-winded. And I just wrote one the other day. The sucker was 3 pages long. I thought, well, maybe I could just do a video. So I figured, well, I'll just read the sucker off and maybe it'll be a little more fun this way. Everyone else seems to have fun with it. I might as well join the crowd, right? So my latest response was in regards to an article where the Ayatollah Khomeini has put out, or is going to be putting out, a secret video, as Iran likes to call it, about the end times and how they're near, and I think kind of preparing people for a major conflict. Basically getting everybody in the mood to be martyrs, And I'm like, okay. And I watched this, and then I read some of the responses to the article about this video. And I was kind of incredulous at some of the responses I read from, religious people. And I'm pretty sure the majority of the people spouting their vile attitude, they were probably fundamental Christians. But it kind of made myself ask, what is the difference between Islam's end times and that of Christianity's? And pardon me if I don't look at the camera directly too much because I have this thing written out. I'll try not to sound like a robot here. But, for the most part, I think most Muslims I know will admit to the required bloodshed to be committed by their own hands. Not saying they'll do it. They just admit it's in there, okay? Whereas, Christians only talk about heaven, and they tend to stay away from mentioning the true details of Armageddon, a time when they will be expected to return with God and witness, if not help participate in the slaughter of millions that are left on earth. And either way, I think on both sides of the table, when you look at the picture, y'all some pretty fucked up people, okay? I really wish my children didn't have to be subjected to this kind of illness on this planet. I wish there was a place to escape to. I had said that to Daryl the other day. It's my significant other. He and I were talking about this, and I said, what's really disturbing about this is that this is almost like the Bay of Pigs in a way. I mean, granted, they're not like miles away from Florida, but this is kind of our version of it, if they're being very serious. And I think this is a legitimate threat going on. I don't think this is a bunch of mental and psychological games. I think Israel really wants to jump on top of these people and start a fight. And I said, there's nowhere in the world I could go right now to avoid this. It doesn't matter where I go. No part of the planet other than being dead. That's the only way to get away from this madness. And that's what's really sad, But, I look at all the propaganda that's been spewing out of Iran at present. And, the new secret video I mentioned that's to be released to the populace over the next week. And it reiterates that the end times are near and that the Imam Mahdi will make his presence known soon. And I watched this video. It's a snoozer. Other than the scenes where they flash into dead bodies, a kid's head blown off on the street in Iraq kind of thing, you want to sleep because it's like listening to a Pat Robertson sermon where he breaks down scripture by scripture what it means and maps, and it's not very interesting. I don't even know how these people would get excited unless they're just that repressed that this is exciting. So, and then I look at our own states of things over here, and currently conservatism has been making a comeback. And I don't hold too many qualms with some of their issues or their beliefs. I mean, guns and Bibles don't really bother me. As long as you're not making me read a Bible with a gun pointed at my face, that would probably bother me. But I even, honestly, I do see a need for religion. Our world would probably be horrible without idol worship because people do need a higher presence in order to feel validated at times. And there isn't a medication out there yet that can do what religion can. Hands down. Nothing. Not even street drugs. I'm sorry. They cannot do what religion can accomplish. But Then you see all this religious agenda on the campaign trail this election season, and I do find it upsetting. I see rants and raves against people for drawing a line in the sand and asking school prayer banners to be removed. I see people spewing hate-filled religious speech about gay soldiers, or not gay soldiers, but gays at soldiers' funerals. Oops. And, I mean, they simply are doing it because it's a good venue to get attention. It may be a lawsuit to get money off of the people that they're verbally assaulting. But more recently, the military has also been quietly sweeping out religious references from their uniforms in on the battlefield and such. And this is in regards to a patch that the Marines have that says doing God's work with other people's money. And a lot of people are in an uproar about that. They're going on from everything about separation of church and state, and we were founded on religion, this country was, which is a whole nother video, which I will do one of these days on my views on that one. But it's getting the shit's getting pretty thick, And I really don't have a problem with the military cleaning out religious references. I really don't think that the priests on the battlefield, the chaplains and stuff, I don't know why they're on the payroll, honestly. That's not right. But that's just my point of view. I mean, if these guys are so religious and they're not willing to go to a battlefield without pay, that's not much of a sacrifice in my opinion. But, my bottom line is I see all these rants and raves and people are upset, and I don't really have a problem with it. But I hear cries from the masses of religious Christians that our country is falling apart and we're losing our moral high ground because of these changes that we're making. Still, last I checked, this has been the most corrupt time in history over the past decade or more, and the majority rule of Christian fundamentalism has been at the helm. More than that, I think people have forgotten the Cold War and its effect on our nation's take on religion and politics. I think that's the real issue here, the underlying problem. And I really think that's what the government is trying to fix. Well, at least Obama is, and he's getting all kinds of flack now for that. But, Christianity was taken and used for propaganda for anti-communist attacks. A great example of that would be our putting the term under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. That was just our way of competing with Russia's anti-religious attitude. We took it to the extreme. Well, if their government's going to be an unreligious state, we'll be religious. We'll be the exact opposite of what they are. Okay, typical kids fighting on the playground mentality, but that's what they did. And the Red Scare was huge, and they found so many ways to justify bleeding away the lines of church and state that I think we eventually just accepted the bias. Now, we are here in the new millennia, realizing that there is no true place for this in our politics anymore. We have seen it demonstrated how letting religious agendas do not mix well in government operations. You can just look at Iran and Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Chechnya, hell, Turkey. You just look at these places, and yet for some reason, the religious right in our country thinks that this can't happen here. And that's what really bothers me, is the outright denial and naivety about it all. I think part of the problem is that the Cold War era recently ended, and that particular generation, they grew up in this biased political system. They do not comprehend what occurred because they were too young to know. These children experienced the media propaganda blitz with movies like The Robe, The Ten Commandments, Samson and Delilah. The music industry did its part as well. It released hits like Somebody Up There Likes Me. He's got the whole world in his hands. We all know that song. Even some programs on TV would go so far as to call failures in the Soviet space program a result of godlessness. That sounds like something out of V for Vendetta, Then you had shows like The Catholic Hour, This is the Life. I've actually caught that show a couple of times on reruns. And they would go on about being a good American, being a good believer, and talk about the domestic threat of communism. That's a fun term, domestic threat. We hear that all the time now. We have a domestic threat of radical terrorism, radical Islam. These are domestic threats. They just had a thing where the FBI is saying now that we have governmental domestic threats, meaning people are so pissed off with our government, we risk them doing something stupid, which I think is typical. I was waiting for that bomb to drop after Obama signed the law about the indefinite detainee of terrorists on American soil, including citizens. There you go. They found a way to classify us now. So teabaggers, be careful. They're watching you. But anyway, sounds really familiar. But these TV shows, they emphasize that we, as a nation, were a Christian nation. Not religious, but Christian. And even more disturbing was that the majority of these shows, they aired on Sunday mornings, right alongside the morning news. Thus, you're putting government and church in lockstep in the media, which is the biggest source to get people on board is communication. The bottom line was, if you weren't a Christian, you were a commie. And that was the bottom line. And, after harrowing experiences with Nazis in Japan in World War II, all the atrocities they saw on the battlefields, people didn't want to fail at being a good Christian, which meant being a good American, a good patriot. It's amazing how they twisted that. But my point is that many of these things you see atheist-based lawsuits going on about, they're Cold War era propaganda issues. Nativity scenes at the town hall lawn, school prayer banners, 10 commandments in the front of school buildings, government buildings. Okay, these are remnants of a long ago ended war. And people just are having a hard time letting them go or understanding what they actually represent. I really feel that Americans are starting to realize that faith is just that. It is not a political agenda like that of Iran. It is not a means to fix our economy. It's a comfort for the soul, and that's what it should be. It has no place in our government policy making. I strongly believe supporting Israel is a mistake. I can't tell you how many times they backstabbed us at this point, and how many times have we caught them instigating conflicts to begin with. Just outright instigating everything. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not all on them. There is a searing, bigoted hatred of these people in the Middle East. Sadly, though, I think it's the Muslim doctrine, and well, not Muslims, but the Islamic doctrine, at least in the Quran, it does take a stance directly against them. And that's essentially what blows my mind, because we listen to all of this, and then we are headed towards the same hardline stance with our own religious doctrines. And I just don't understand how we don't see this madness in that line of thought. We can look at others and judge, right? But we'll still go and look in the mirror. And it's just total self-denial about our own path. And that's it, I think, for now.